Wait, so you're telling me that tiny thing could actually kill Commander Kurthax? Like for real? Zixtal leaned closer to the containment field, their four crystalline eyes reflecting the shimmer of the force barrier as they studied the minuscule arachnid within. Professor Helena Chen suppressed a smile, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the urge to laugh at the alien student's incredulity. That's correct. The Brazilian wandering spider, specifically this female Phoneutria nigriventer, is considered one of Earth's most venomous spiders. Size isn't everything in nature, especially on our planet. The classroom of 15 Arxian exchange students buzzed with a mixture of chittering and crystalline vibrations, their species equivalent of excited whispers. Their towering crystalline forms, ranging from 8 to 10 feet tall, made the standard-sized classroom feel rather cramped. The fact that they were all trying to crowd around a tiny spider in a 6-inch containment cube only added to the comical scene. But Commander Kurthax survived direct plasma fire in the Rigel campaign. Another student, Mixvor, protested. Their crystalline structure flickered with bands of deep purple, a sign of distress in Arxian physiology. He once lifted a small shuttle with his bare manifestation fields. Ah yes, your famous commander. Helena nodded, pulling up a holoscreen with Kurthax's impressive military record. The Arxian warrior was indeed legendary, even by human standards. While I don't doubt his incredible achievements, you're making a common mistake in xenobiology, assuming that physical strength correlates with resistance to toxins. She tapped the containment field, causing the spider to shift slightly. The entire class flinched backward in perfect unison, their crystalline bodies chiming like a startled wind chime orchestra. Helena bit her lip to keep from chuckling. You see, the Phoneutria's venom is a complex cocktail of neurotoxins. It doesn't care how strong your crystalline matrix is, or how many manifestation fields you can generate. Once it enters your system... She paused for dramatic effect. It begins attacking your nerve cells directly. But we don't even have nerve cells like yours, Zixtal protested. We have crystalline neural pathways. Exactly. Helena's eyes lit up. And that's where it gets fascinating. Your crystalline neural pathways are actually more susceptible to certain components of the venom than human nerve cells. Our research team discovered this completely by accident last year when... She was interrupted by the classroom door sliding open. A massive crystalline figure ducked through the entrance, his form radiating an aura of authority that immediately silenced the room. Commander Kurthax himself, decorated war hero of the Arxian Defense Force, had arrived for his scheduled observation of the xenobiology class. Commander! The students snapped to attention, their bodies resonating in perfect harmony, a sign of deep respect in Arxian culture. Kurthax's crystalline form shifted through various shades of blue as he surveyed the room. At ease, students. Professor Chen, I trust today's lesson is proceeding well? Oh, perfectly timed, Commander. Helena smiled warmly. We were just discussing how this little one here could theoretically be lethal to an Arxian of your impressive stature. Kurthax approached the containment field, his massive form dwarfing everything around him. He studied the spider with what Helena had learned to recognize as Arxian amusement, rapid flickering of pale yellow throughout his crystal matrix. Professor Chen, while I respect Earth's remarkable biodiversity, surely you're exaggerating for educational impact. This creature is barely visible to our optical sensors. Would you care to review the chemical analysis, Commander? Helena's smile turned slightly mischievous as she pulled up another holoscreen. We've done extensive testing on the venom's interaction with crystalline neural pathways. The results are quite conclusive. What followed was 15 minutes of increasingly animated discussion as Kurthax reviewed the data, his crystalline form cycling through various colors of disbelief, shock, and finally, grudging acceptance. The students watched in amazed silence as their legendary commander was systematically convinced that yes, this tiny Earth arachnid could indeed end his illustrious military career in under 30 minutes. Remarkable, Kurthax finally admitted, his form settling into a thoughtful shade of green. Simply remarkable. And you say this isn't even your most dangerous spider? Oh, not even close, Helena grinned. Wait until you hear about the Sydney funnel web spider. Or better yet, let me tell you about some of our cone snails. Professor, Zixtal interrupted, their crystal matrix pulsing with curiosity. Is this why the Unified Species Council classified Earth as a death world? Death world? Helena blinked. Is that what they're calling us now? Indeed, Kurthax confirmed. Earth was officially classified as a Class 13 death world shortly after first contact. It's one of the reasons why this exchange program is considered an extreme survival course in our education system. Helena couldn't help but laugh out loud this time. A death world? Because of some spiders and snails? Oh, wait until you see what we have planned for next week's lesson on Australian wildlife. The entire class's crystal matrices flickered with alarm patterns. Speaking of which, Helena continued, reaching for another containment field, who would like to meet a box jellyfish? The sound of 15 Arxian students simultaneously backing away from her desk created a harmonic resonance that nearly shattered the classroom windows. Professor Chen, Carathax's voice carried a note of newfound respect. I'm beginning to understand why humans have such a formidable reputation in the galaxy. To evolve on a planet with such lethal life forms. Oh, these aren't even the scary ones, Helena waved dismissively. These are just the ones we can safely keep in a classroom. Remind me to tell you about our bacteria sometime. Or viruses. Or you know what's really interesting? Prions. The class spent the next hour in a fascinating discussion about Earth's most lethal small organisms, with Carathax taking extensive notes and occasionally radiating patterns of disbelief. By the end of the lesson, the legendary commander had requested permission to audit future classes, for tactical research purposes. As the students filed out, still chattering about the deadly spider, Helena overheard Zixtal whisper to Mixvor, "No wonder humans aren't afraid of anything in space. Their entire planet is trying to kill them." "I heard they keep some of these creatures as pets," Mixvor responded, their crystal matrix showing patterns of horror. "Actually," Helena called after them, unable to resist, "many humans consider spiders to be beneficial household guests. They help control pest populations." The crystalline chiming of shocked Arxian students echoed down the hallway, followed by Carathax's deep, resonant laugh. "Professor Chen, I believe you enjoy terrorizing my students a bit too much." "Commander," Helena grinned, carefully securing the spider's containment field. "Would you believe me if I told you that this isn't even the most dangerous thing in this classroom?" Carathax's form shifted to a questioning purple. "What could possibly be more dangerous than that spider?" Helena tapped her temple. "The human brain, Commander. After all, we're the species crazy enough to study these creatures, extract their venoms, and figure out how to use them. Did you know we're actually developing new medicines based on spider venom?" The commander's crystalline form briefly displayed patterns that Helena's xenobiology training suggested meant humans are insane, but his voice carried only admiration. "Professor, I believe I speak for all Arxians when I say we are both terrified and impressed by your species." "That's probably the wisest reaction," Helena agreed, then added with a wink. "Just wait until next semester when I teach the course on human microbiomes. Did you know the average human body contains about 39 trillion bacteria?" The pattern of color that rippled through Carathax's form at that revelation would become legendary among future generations of Arxian xenobiologists studying human Arxian first contact footage. It was later described in academic papers as the exact moment when the Arxian Defense Force realized that every human was technically a walking biological weapon. As Carathax left the classroom, still processing this new information, Helena began preparing for her next lesson. She smiled to herself, remembering the old saying about how the most dangerous thing on Earth was human ingenuity. The Arxians were about to learn that humans hadn't just survived their death world. They'd learned to understand it, study it, and even harness its most lethal aspects for their own purposes. And that, perhaps, was the scariest thing of all. The next day, enrollment in the Earth Sciences program at the Arxian Military Academy tripled. The official reason given was critical tactical research into potential biological warfare vectors. The unofficial reason, whispered in crystalline vibrations among the students, was much simpler. Know thy neighbor, especially if they evolved on a planet where everything is trying to kill them, and they somehow turned it into an advantage. Meanwhile, in her office, Helena was already planning next week's lesson on platypus venom, box jellyfish neurotoxins, and the blue-ringed octopus. She had a feeling the commander would particularly enjoy learning about how these creatures had influenced human medical research. After all, what better way to demonstrate humanity's unique approach to survival than by showing how they turned their planet's deadliest weapons into tools for healing? It was, she mused, a perfectly human solution to living on a death world. If you can't beat them, study them until you figure out how to use their weapons for your own purposes. The small spider in its containment field seemed to wave one of its legs, almost as if agreeing with her thoughts. Helena smiled and made a mental note to request more containment fields. She had a feeling she'd be getting a lot more visitors to her classroom in the coming weeks. In the end, it wasn't the size of Earth's creatures that impressed the galactic community. It was humanity's ability to not just survive among them, but to thrive, study, and even benefit from their deadliest aspects. It was a lesson the Arxians would never forget, especially after Commander Kurthax submitted his revised threat assessment of Earth to the Unified Species Council. The classification was upgraded from Class 13 Death World to Class 13 Death World with extremely resourceful inhabitants. It was the first time in galactic history that a planet's classification had needed a subtitle, and somewhere in her classroom, Helena Chen smiled, knowing that her next lesson would only reinforce that classification. After all, she hadn't even started on the topic of Australian wildlife yet. Today, class, we're going to discuss something that makes that spider look like a friendly pet. Professor Helena Chen's voice carried a note of mischievous anticipation as she addressed her now expanded class of 30 Arxian students. Commander Kurthax sat in the back, his crystalline form already showing ripples of concern. What could possibly be worse than the tiny Deathbringer? Zixtal asked, their crystal matrix flickering with what Helena had learned to recognize as nervous curiosity. Oh, you're going to love this, Helena grinned, pulling up a holographic display. Today, we're talking about something so dangerous that even humans treat it with extreme caution. Something invisible, relentless, and absolutely fascinating from a scientific perspective. The image materialized in the center of the classroom, a microscopic view of a twisted protein structure. This, my dear students, is a prion. Kurthax's form shifted to deep indigo, a color Helena had never seen before. Professor, according to my briefing materials, that's just a protein. Exactly. Helena's enthusiasm made several students lean back. Just a protein, a misfolded protein that can trigger other proteins to misfold in the same way. No DNA, no RNA, no cellular structure. It's not even technically alive. And yet, she paused for effect. It's practically indestructible and invariably fatal once symptoms appear. The classroom erupted in crystalline harmonics of disbelief. But how can something that's not alive be fatal? Mixfor's voice carried genuine confusion. That's the beauty of it. Helena began pacing, her excitement evident. Imagine a template that corrupts everything it touches, turning normal proteins into copies of itself. You can't kill it because it was never alive. Traditional sterilization methods? Useless. These things can survive autoclave temperatures. Some can even withstand radiation that would kill any living thing. The students' crystal matrices were showing increasingly distressed color patterns. Kurthax raised what passed for an Arxian hand. Professor Chen, are you suggesting that Earth harbors non-living particles that can convert other molecules into more of themselves? Exactly. And here's the really interesting part. They're species-specific. Some prion diseases can jump between species, while others are locked to a single species. We still don't fully understand why. Wait, Zixtal interrupted, their form flickering rapidly. You said still don't fully understand. You mean humans know about these things and continue to study them? Helena's grin widened. Of course. We have entire research facilities dedicated to understanding prions. In fact, we've made remarkable progress in recent years toward potential treatments for prion diseases. The classroom fell silent enough to hear the subtle harmonic resonance of the Arxians' crystal matrices. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Kurthax spoke slowly, his form cycling through various shades of blue and purple. Your species discovered proteins that can corrupt other proteins, are virtually indestructible, and cause inevitable death. And your response was to build laboratories to study them more closely. Well, how else would we figure out how to fight them? Helena shrugged. That's kind of our thing, you know. Find something dangerous, study it, learn to deal with it, and hopefully find a way to use it to help people. Help people? Mixfor's crystal matrix was showing patterns of utter confusion. How could you possibly help people with something like this? Oh, you'd be surprised. Understanding prion behavior has given us incredible insights into protein folding and misfolding. This research is crucial for treating various neurodegenerative diseases. We're even exploring applications in materials science. After all, a self-propagating protein configuration has some interesting potential applications if we can control it. The class stared at her in unified crystalline horror. Professor, Kurthax's voice carried a note of resigned acceptance. I believe I now understand why the Unified Species Council recently added a notation to Earth's classification. The new addendum reads, Warning. Local sentients have evolved unprecedented risk tolerance and scientific curiosity. Approach with extreme caution. Helena laughed. Risk tolerance? Oh, Commander, you haven't seen anything yet. Next week, we're covering super-saturated oxygen environments and why humans are basically walking chemical fires waiting to happen. Did you know we're one of the few species that can survive in an oxygen-rich atmosphere? Most species would spontaneously combust. The sound of 30 Archean students simultaneously realizing they were in a classroom with what they now understood to be a naturally occurring oxidation hazard was something Helena would treasure forever. But before we get to that, she continued cheerfully, let's talk about another fascinating Earth phenomenon, autoimmune diseases. You see, sometimes our own immune systems decide to attack our bodies, and we've figured out how to turn that into medical treatments. The rest of the class was spent in a fascinating discussion about how humans had taken their body's own potentially lethal quirks and transformed them into therapeutic tools. By the end, even Crithax was showing color patterns that suggested a mixture of horror and admiration. As the students filed out, still vibrating with nervous energy, Crithax remained behind. Professor Chen, he began, his form settling into a thoughtful shade of green. I've led armies against some of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. I've faced plasma storms and gravitational anomalies. But I must admit, your planet's hazards, and your species' approach to them, are uniquely unsettling. Helena smiled. You know what's really interesting, Commander? Everything we've discussed so far exists only on the macro scale. Wait until we get to quantum biology and how Earth life might be utilizing quantum effects. Did you know some scientists think our sense of smell might involve quantum tunneling? Crithax's form briefly flickered to pure white, a color Helena had never seen in Archean physiology before. Professor, he said with what she recognized as carefully controlled calm, I believe I now understand why humans were so quick to master faster-than-light travel. Your entire existence is a quantum uncertainty event. That's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about our species, Helena beamed. Now about next week's lesson on extremophile bacteria. Crithax's departure from the classroom was notably hastier than usual. Helena could have sworn she heard him muttering something about updating the Archean Defense Force's first contact protocols to include the warning. Caution. Species has evolved to weaponize everything, including their own biological failures. She made a mental note to send him some reading material about how humans had learned to use viral vectors for gene therapy. After all, what better way to demonstrate humanity's adaptability than explaining how they'd turned their own pathogens into medical tools? As she packed up her materials, Helena reflected on how the Archeans' perspective of humanity had evolved over the course of her classes. They'd started the semester thinking of humans as fragile beings from a dangerous world. Now they understood the truth. Humans weren't despite their deadly environment. They were because of it. The next day, the Unified Species Council received a formal request from the Archean Science Academy to establish a permanent research exchange program with Earth's universities. The justification simply read, "They make death work for them. We need to understand how." Helena couldn't wait to show them how humans had learned to use neurotoxins as local anesthetics. But perhaps she'd save the lecture on how they'd weaponized capsaicin, the thing that makes peppers spicy, into both a defensive spray and a food additive for another day. After all, you had to pace yourself when teaching aliens about the wonderful absurdity of human innovation. Professor Chen, is it true that humans intentionally eat poisons for pleasure? The question came from a new student, Nixra, whose crystalline form sparkled with genuine confusion. Helena was in the middle of setting up for today's class when the question stopped her in her tracks. She turned to face the now packed classroom of 40 Archean students, plus Commander Crithax and 2 other military observers who had started attending after word of her lessons spread through the Archean Defense Force. That's an interesting way to phrase it, Helena grinned. But yes, we do. In fact, that's exactly what we're discussing today. Capsaicin and other chemical compounds humans consume for fun. Crithax's form shifted to what Helena now recognized as his humans are insane color pattern, a sort of shimmering mauve with gold flecks. Today's lesson, Helena continued, pulling up a holographic display of a chili pepper, is about how humans turned plant defense mechanisms into recreational activities and military applications. Who here knows what this is? According to our xenobotany database, Zixtal offered, that's a plant that produces capsaicin, a chemical irritant designed to prevent consumption by mammals. Excellent! And can anyone guess what humans did when we discovered a plant that literally evolved chemical warfare to stop mammals from eating it? The classroom was silent for a moment before Mixvor ventured hesitantly. Based on previous lessons, You studied it and found a way to weaponize it? Oh, better than that, Helena beamed. We turned it into a competitive sport. The crystalline harmonics of confused Arxians filled the room. You see, Helena continued, pulling up more images. Humans not only eat these peppers despite their defensive chemicals, we deliberately breed them to be stronger. We've created varieties so potent they can cause physical injury, and then we hold contests to see who can eat the most. Professor, one of the new military observers interrupted, their forms showing clear distress patterns. Are you saying humans engage in chemical warfare against themselves for entertainment? Absolutely, and that's not even the best part. We also turned capsaicin into both a defensive weapon, pepper spray, and a food additive that millions of humans consume daily. We basically said to the plant, "Oh, you evolved a chemical weapon to stop mammals from eating you? That's cute. We're going to eat you specifically because of that weapon, breed you to make the weapon stronger, and then use your weapon to season other foods." The classroom erupted in a cacophony of crystalline vibrations. "But why?" Kurthax asked, his form cycling through various shades of disbelief. "Well, why not?" Helena shrugged. "It turns out capsaicin triggers pain receptors without causing actual damage. Some humans enjoy that sensation. Plus, it has some interesting medical applications. We've developed topical analgesics using capsaicin, essentially using the pain-causing chemical to treat pain." She pulled up another display showing various hot sauces and pepper sprays. "And here's where it gets really interesting. The same compound can be found in these commercial food products and these law enforcement-grade weapons. The only real difference is concentration and delivery method." "Professor Chen," Nixra's voice wavered slightly. "Are you telling us that humans carry weapons that are essentially concentrated food seasonings?" "Now you're getting it." Helena's enthusiasm made several students lean back. "And wait until you hear about tear gas and its relationship to wasabi." The rest of the class was spent exploring humanity's peculiar relationship with chemical irritants, from their culinary uses to their medical applications. Helena particularly enjoyed explaining how the Scoville scale worked, and watching the Arxians try to process the concept of humans creating an objective measurement system for how much they could hurt themselves with food. "And remember," she concluded, "this is just one example of how humans take things that should kill or harm us, and turn them into something useful, or fun, or both. Next week, we'll be discussing alcohol fermentation and how humans discovered that controlled poisoning could be entertaining." Kurthax's form briefly displayed a pattern that the xenolinguistics department would later spend months trying to translate. The closest they could come was, "Evolutionary survival instinct has left the chat." As the students filed out, still vibrating with a mixture of horror and fascination, Helena overheard one of the military observers muttering, "No wonder they survived first contact. How do you intimidate a species that turns chemical weapons into hot sauce?" The next day, the Arxian Diplomatic Corps sent an urgent update to all their field agents. "When dealing with humans, do not assume that their consumption or use of seemingly harmful substances indicates hostile intent. They appear to have evolved beyond normal survival instincts and may actually be enjoying themselves." Meanwhile, in her office, Helena was preparing next week's lesson on fermentation, distillation, and how humans had turned poison into a global industry worth trillions. She had a feeling the commander would particularly enjoy learning about how different human cultures had independently discovered that nearly anything containing sugar could be turned into alcohol. She glanced at the small spider in its containment field, still the star of her first lesson. "You know," she told it, "maybe we should do a special class on how humans turned venoms into medicines. After all, nothing says humanity quite like looking at something that could kill us and thinking, 'I bet I could use that to cure diseases.'" The spider seemed to wave one of its legs in agreement, or perhaps it was just repositioning itself. Either way, Helena knew one thing for certain. Her class was changing how the Arxians viewed humanity. They'd arrived thinking of humans as surprisingly resilient for soft, squishy beings. They were leaving with the understanding that humans weren't just survivors. They were alchemists who turned deadly things into tools, weapons, medicines, and entertainments. As she finalized her lesson plans, Helena received a notification that the Unified Species Council had added another amendment to Earth's classification. Warning: local sentients demonstrate concerning ability to derive enjoyment from potentially lethal substances and situations. Cultural exchange programs should include comprehensive safety protocols for both visitors to Earth and Earth substances being introduced to other worlds. She couldn't help but laugh. Wait until they heard about humans in extreme sports. After all, nothing said humanity quite like jumping out of a perfectly good aircraft for fun. But that would be a lesson for another day. For now, she had to figure out how to explain to a room full of crystalline aliens why humans had looked at toxic fungus growing on grain, and thought, I bet if we refined this, it would make great medicine. The story of ergo and the development of modern pharmaceuticals would either fascinate them or convince them that humans were entirely insane. Probably both. Today, Professor Helena Chen announced to her now legendary xenobiology class, we're going to discuss something that makes everything else we've covered seem perfectly reasonable by comparison. She paused, enjoying the nervous crystalline harmonics that rippled through the classroom. We're going to talk about human sports and recreational activities. Commander Kurthax, now a regular fixture in the back of the room along with a growing number of military observers and xenobiologists, shifted to his characteristic preparing for human insanity color pattern. Professor, Zixtal ventured, how could human recreational activities be more concerning than your relationship with toxic substances? Helena's grin widened. Tell me, what would you call a species that invented something called base jumping? She pulled up a holographic display showing humans leaping off various tall structures with nothing but fabric packs on their backs. The entire classroom resonated with horror. But that's not even the best part, Helena continued cheerfully. Sometimes we do it in specialized suits that let us glide through the air like flying squirrels. We call it wingsuit flying. The fatality rate is, well, let's just say it's significant. Professor Chen, one of the new military observers interrupted, their crystalline forms showing clear distress patterns. Are you suggesting humans willingly jump from lethal heights for entertainment? Oh, absolutely. And that's just the beginning. Let me tell you about free solo climbing. She switched the display to show Alex Honnold scaling El Capitan. This human is climbing a 3,000-foot vertical rock face without any safety equipment. Just his hands, feet, and an incredibly calm mind. The classroom erupted in a cascade of crystalline vibrations that nearly shattered the windows. But why? Kurthax asked, his form cycling through colors Helena had never seen before. For fun, for the challenge, because it's there. Helena gestured enthusiastically. Humans have this fascinating drive to push boundaries even, or especially, when those boundaries involve potential death. We see something dangerous and think, I wonder if I could do that. She switched the display again, this time showing various extreme sports, cave diving, volcano boarding, big wave surfing, and proximity wingsuit flying. The class spent the next hour discussing various extreme sports and their technological spin-offs. Helena particularly enjoyed explaining how the development of safety equipment for dangerous activities had led to advances in materials science and medical treatment protocols. As the students filed out, still vibrating with a mixture of awe and disbelief, Kurthax remained behind. Professor Chen, he began, his form settling into what Helena now recognized as his philosophical contemplation color pattern. I believe I finally understand why humans have been so successful in galactic society. Oh, you're all insane, he stated matter-of-factly, but it's a highly productive form of insanity. You see something that should kill you, and instead of avoiding it, you study it, challenge it, and ultimately master it. It's terrifying and impressive in equal measure. Helena beamed. Thank you, Commander. That's probably the most accurate description of humanity I've ever heard. Just wait until next week's lesson on extreme environment sports. Wait until you hear about free diving. Kurthax's hasty departure was accompanied by crystal harmonics that the xenolinguistics department would later translate as, "Oh God, there's more." The next day, the Unified Species Council received another update to Earth's classification. Note: human recreational activities often exceed survival probability calculations. Do not attempt to prevent humans from engaging in apparently suicidal behaviors. They are probably doing it on purpose, and have likely developed safety protocols that, while insufficient by any reasonable standard, satisfy their peculiar risk assessment metrics. In her office, Helena smiled as she prepared her next lesson. She had a feeling the commander would particularly enjoy learning about how humans had turned the simple act of sliding down frozen mountains on pieces of wood into an Olympic sport. After all, nothing said humanity quite like looking at a snow-covered cliff and thinking, I bet I could ski down that, the end.